Devil May Cry creator Hideki Kamiya flips the script on the struggle between heaven and hell in Bayonetta, certainly the flashiest action game we've seen in a long time. Casting you as the titular witch, Bayonetta wields some wicked alchemy that somehow manages to make its forebear seem downright tame. Does it all amount to flash, or is there more to this witch than her absurd proportions?
Guns! Guns! Guns!
Like most everything else about it, Bayonetta's story seems to relish its absurdity. Long ago, two clans of witches got into a war, and one side was nearly eliminated. You play as Bayonetta, the last Umbra witch, stricken with memory loss and besieged by the agents of Paradiso, who look a lot like twisted biblical angels on steroids. Your allies are few, among them a Danny DeVito caricature whose mere presence is absurd, and a Morpheus wannabe named Rodin who sells you demonic weapons. As the story progresses, Bayonetta slowly regains her memory, stirred in part by an incredibly lame love interest and a little girl who looks a lot like her.
If there's two things I hate in this world, it's cockroaches and crying babies.
The story is told roughly half and half by fully animated cutscenes and oddly stylized film strip sequences that look like something fashioned with Gary's mod.
Bust a cap in yo ass.
Right on, baby. Right on.
There are a lot of them, and chances are they'll go right over your head. But that's okay. The story takes you to some cool places that end up being brilliant sets for this remarkable action game.
Yeah! As long as there's music, I'll keep on dancing.
I tell you what, if I could see them bastards that did this to my car, forget about it.
Enzo, the road. Pay attention.
If there's one element of Bayonetta that you could consider orthodox, it's its layout. The game is linear and tyrannically steered by its narrative, though you may not immediately notice when you're playing through it for the first time, given how pitched the combat is. When you peer at the man behind the curtain, the rinse-repeat formula is revealed. You'll scrap with a dozen angels or a couple of building-sized bosses, receive a grade for your performance, and watch a cutscene or three. Quick-time events occasionally punctuate the action, but don't worry, they're not nearly as oppressive or punishing as the ones in the God of War games. Don't mistake its adherence to formula for a lack of imagination, though. Bayonetta may be by the book, but it's by no means ordinary. Very few enemy types feel like lame witch fodder, and the game is good at mixing up monster compositions in its encounters in ways that keep you engaged and consistently surprised. Soon enough, enemies that were cast as bosses in earlier levels show up in regular fights, sometimes in multiples. And by the time the endgame rolls around, creatures that could credibly serve as final bosses in other games are served up to you as mere roadblocks. Sure, this means that Bayonetta is recycling monsters, but it does make you wonder just how much crazier things will get down the road. The answer? A whole lot. Among other things, expect some clever, if hit or miss, homages to classic games interspersed throughout. The game is about 15 hours long, and by the time you're done, you'll have dispatched hundreds of celestial horrors and all sorts of mad configurations, with some of the most far-out moves you've ever seen. Rest assured you'll have plenty to do after the credits roll, with hidden arena stages, 2 unlockable difficulty levels, and more moves and power-ups that you can hope to afford after a single playthrough. To an onlooker, Bayonetta's combat appears completely off the wall, even borderline nonsensical. When you get your hand on the controls, though, it moves like a revelation. The combat is deep and complex, but never onerous. As your move list and arsenal expand, so does the multitude of ways you can met out the pain, and the results are always explosive and vivacious. At least insofar as combat goes, Bayonetta is currently the action game to beat. Bayonetta starts the game equipped with 4 handguns, one strapped to each of her limbs. As you progress, you get access to all manner of weapons that you can assign in place of them, from swords to shotguns to rocket launchers. This enables an astounding level of variability when it comes to combat, with results more far-reaching than you'd imagine. More than simply overriding your punch attacks with sword strokes, equipping a katana opens up a whole new slew of combos, complete with unique animations that complement the rest of your moves. The angels you fight will also drop weapons that you can scoop up and wield temporarily, and their effects can be wild. Think pole dancing on a lance for a devastating area of effect attack. The game's master stroke is the witch time mechanic. If you dodge an attack at just the right moment, time slows down, allowing you to lay the pain on your torpid enemies. For a game with such a pronounced focus on obscene offense, it's crucial that you're given incentive to play defensively to a degree. For one thing, Bayonetta would have been just as pretty if it were a button masher, but nowhere near as fun. Uninterrupted strings of offense are rewarded with torture attacks, which work just as advertised, finishing moves powered by brutal torture devices. As evidenced by their sheer graphic variety, it's clear that the designers expended a good deal of creative capital on these nasty little flourishes. Crazy as it all may seem when you're merely watching it, you'll often find yourself scarcely able to believe that it's actually you that's pulling off all that madness happening on screen. Any action game coming out post-Bayonetta has its work cut out for it in this regard. Bayonetta's look is imaginative and extravagant. There's plenty of cheesecake, not surprisingly. More than a few of Bayonetta's moves end with her assuming some kind of pinup pose. But to write it off because of the ways in which it's exploitative is to do it a disservice.
After jewels instead of cash, just like a girl.
The angelic monsters you fight look like the nightmare versions of something out of a religious history exhibit. And if you're impressed by games that utilize scale in awe-inspiring ways, wait till you get a load of Bayonetta's last level. Bayonetta is anything if not memorable and inspired. The music is a frankly bizarre mix of J-pop and jazz that often fail to click. The voice work consists of hammed-up stereotypes. You'll laugh at them and not with them.
Enzo, someone's given you a present. Too bad. I can't stand bugs.
The Xbox 360 version slows down infrequently, and you'll notice a good bit of screen tearing, though these are mere nitpicks when compared to how the PS3 port has fared, with its way frequent chugs and inordinate amount of loading. Needless to say, if you have a choice, play it on 360. Bayonetta is as good as it gets when it comes to action games. The combat system is the work of masters, and the whole production is vivid, bold, and imaginative. It's also a hugely substantial experience that sustains and encourages repeat playthroughs. If you want to kick off 2010 in style, look no further than Bayonetta.